Stepsister stole my car and wrecked it, but Dad defended her. So I left, but now she wants to move with me. So yeah, my name's Laura, and when I was 13, my life pretty much turned into a mess. I guess it started with my parents' divorce. Not that I was surprised by it or anything. I mean, they were always arguing, shouting at each other over the dumbest stuff. My dad was this guy who always had something to complain about. And my mom? Well, she didn't have the patience to deal with him. So the split was inevitable, I think. At first, I thought maybe things would calm down after the divorce, like no more fights, just peace and quiet. But nah, things got a lot weirder. Fast. They agreed to split custody of me. Weekdays with my dad and weekends with my mom, since she had this demanding job. So I'm bouncing back and forth between their houses, and it's lonely, man. Being an only kid, I didn't have anyone to talk to about how messed up everything felt. But then, 3 months after the divorce, my dad hits me with this announcement. He's got news, big news. He's getting remarried, and he's moving in this woman, Mary, along with her daughter, Jessica. He's acting like it's the best thing ever, like I should be happy to suddenly have a new sister. I remember sitting there, just nodding along. But inside, I was screaming. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't want a new mom, and I definitely didn't want some stranger invading my space. So, I meet them. Mary seemed all right at first, kind of cold, but not rude. But Jess? She's like this perfect, shiny 14-year-old, all smiles and sweetness. At least that's what everyone else saw. The first couple of weeks I was trying to be nice, get along. But it became clear real quick that this wasn't going to be like some Disney movie where we all magically get along and become one big happy family. Nope. Jess was the favorite right off the bat, and it sucked. Like, on her birthday, my dad threw her this big party with cake, decorations, the whole deal. And I'm just standing there like, what the hell? Because my birthday was 2 months before that. And guess what I got? Nothing. Not even a happy birthday from him. I'm not exaggerating. He legit forgot. But for Jess? Oh, she was the princess, and I was just there. It didn't stop there either. My dad started driving her to school every day, which was just another slap in the face because I still had to take the bus like some random nobody. And then, if I ever did something wrong, like literally anything, my dad would be on me in a second, criticizing me for not being like Jessica, who's always so well behaved. Yeah, right. I remember one time I came home from school, and Jess had borrowed my favorite sweater without asking. And when I told her not to touch my stuff again, she ran to my dad, fake crying, acting like I was being mean to her. What did my dad do? Took her side, of course, saying I needed to learn to share. It was ridiculous. I mean, this girl was constantly taking my things, makeup, clothes, even my school supplies, and somehow I was always the one who ended up being the problem. The worst part? My dad wasn't even trying to hide the favoritism. It was like he had completely forgotten I existed. Like, I was no longer his daughter, just this annoying person who was in the way. Jess was the perfect one who could do no wrong, while I was invisible unless I was being criticized. It wasn't just my dad either. Mary never missed a chance to make me feel small, either ignoring me or lecturing me about how I should be more like her daughter. By the time I was 16, I was pretty much checked out of my family. I stopped trying to bond with them or be part of their happy little world because it was clear that I didn't fit. So I focused on myself. I got a job, started saving money, and after a while, I managed to buy my own car. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, and it felt like the only thing in my life I actually had control over. My mom chipped in to help me buy it, but I was covering all the insurance, gas, and other expenses myself. My dad didn't offer to help, of course. Why would he? He was too busy paying for everything Jess wanted. Honestly, I didn't care, though. Having that car was my little bit of freedom, something that was just mine. But then, Jess started to notice. She'd wrecked her own car a few weeks after I got mine. Big surprise, right? So now she was bugging me to borrow mine all, "Oh, Laura, I really need it just for today." I shut her down every time. I wasn't stupid. I knew she didn't give a damn about my stuff and would probably trash it just like hers. But she kept pushing. I stood my ground, though, telling her flat out no, every time. Then one day, I came home from school, and my car wasn't in the driveway. My heart sank immediately because I knew what had happened. Sure enough, Jess had taken my car without asking, and when she got back later that night, around 10 p.m., the front of it was all smashed up. She didn't even apologize, just handed me the keys like nothing had happened. I stormed into the house, ready to explode, and went straight to my dad. I thought finally he's going to see how messed up this is and back me up. Right? Wrong. Instead, I got a lecture about being selfish. Selfish because I didn't want to share the car I had worked for, paid for, and maintained on my own. He didn't care that Jess had stolen it and wrecked it. Nope, it was my fault for not letting her borrow it in the first place. Mary chimed in too, of course, like it was some sort of family gang-up. They all turned on me, making me feel like I was crazy for even being mad. Jess? She sat there, acting all innocent, like she didn't just steal and wreck my car. I was furious. I could feel my blood boiling, but there was no point arguing anymore. So the next day, I packed up my things and moved to my mom's place. My dad didn't even try to stop me. He didn't care. I was just gone from his life. And that was it. 5 years went by without a word from him or Jess. Not one phone call, not one text, nothing. But honestly, I didn't miss them. So fast forward 5 years. I'm in college, living my own life, and things are going pretty good. I mean, I'm not rich or anything, but I'm making it work. I got a place off campus, a job that pays the bills, and friends who actually care about me, unlike my so-called family. Life finally felt like it was mine. Then, out of nowhere, I start getting these calls. At first, it was just one or two, and I didn't recognize the number, so I ignored them. I'm not the type to answer calls from numbers I don't know. Too many scammers out there, you know? But then, the calls kept coming. Same number, over and over again. I was like, what the hell? So I finally answer, thinking maybe it's important or something. And guess who it is? Jessica. Freaking Jessica. I hadn't heard from her in 5 years. 5 years of nothing from her or my dad. The second I heard her voice, my stomach dropped. Like, what could she possibly want after all this time? She didn't even sound like she cared about not speaking to me for years. She just jumped right into it like we'd talked yesterday. No big deal. Hey, Laura, it's been so long. How have you been? I was kind of stunned at first. I didn't know whether to laugh or hang up. I decided to just be polite for the moment because I was curious about what she wanted. No way she was calling out of the blue just to chat, right? I'm fine, I guess. What's up, I said, keeping it short because I wasn't in the mood for small talk. She starts going on and on about how she's moving to my city for a new job or something. Apparently, she's had a rough couple of months, lost her place, and now she's relocating. I'm just sitting there listening, thinking, why are you telling me all this? And then, she hits me with it. So I was wondering if I could crash at your place for a while, you know? Just until I get settled? I heard from Dad that you live there, and I figured we could help each other out. I almost dropped my phone. First off, Dad was still apparently keeping tabs on me, which was creepy enough, but the fact that Jess just assumed I'd let her move in after 5 years of silence? I couldn't believe the nerve. It wasn't like we were close before. She ruined my car, and now she thinks I'm just going to welcome her with open arms? I took a second before answering because I didn't want to just yell no and hang up, even though that's what I felt like doing. I don't know, Jess. I mean, I don't really have room for anyone else here, and I've been managing on my own for a while now, I said, trying to sound as calm as possible, but inside I was raging. She didn't even hesitate. Oh, I won't take up much space. I don't even have much stuff with me, and I won't be able to pay rent right away. But you've been living there on your own, so I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like I should just be cool with the fact that she expected to live rent-free in my place. It wasn't even a request at that point. It was more like she'd already made up her mind and was just waiting for me to say yes. But here's the thing. I've worked hard to get where I am. I don't have a lot, but I've been doing everything on my own. There's no way I'm letting someone who wrecked my car and hasn't spoken to me in years just waltz back into my life and take advantage of me. I'm sorry, Jess, but that's not going to work for me, I said, finally just putting it out there. I've got my own stuff going on, and I'm not really in a position to have anyone else staying here right now. I thought that would be the end of it, but of course, she wasn't done. Laura, come on, it's just for a little while. I won't be any trouble, I promise. I just need a place to crash. You're my sister, you can't just leave me hanging like this. I could hear the frustration in her voice, but that didn't make me feel any more guilty. If anything, it made me mad. Now, I was her sister? Where was all this family talk when she and my dad made my life hell? Where was she when I moved out and never heard from them again? I took a deep breath. Look, I'm sorry you're going through a tough time, but I can't help you. You'll have to find another place. I'm sure there are other options. Her tone changed real quick. She went from fake sweet to irritated in a second. I can't believe you're being like this. I thought we were past all that old stuff. You've been doing fine, and it's not like you don't have space. This isn't fair, Laura. I had to laugh at that. Fair? Since when was life ever fair for me? I was done. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into this. Jess, I don't owe you anything. I've been taking care of myself just fine without you or Dad, and I'm not going to change that now. I'm sorry if you're struggling, but that's not my responsibility. There was a long pause, and I could tell she was fuming. But honestly, I didn't care. I'd spent enough years bending over backward for people who didn't care about me, and I wasn't about to start doing it again. Well, thanks for nothing, she snapped before hanging up on me, and just like that, the conversation was over. I sat there for a minute, just staring at my phone. I felt a weird mix of emotions, relief, anger, disbelief, but mostly I just felt tired. Like, why did I even have to deal with this? I had built my own life, moved on from the mess of my childhood, and now they were trying to drag me back into it. But at least I stood my ground. That's one thing I've learned over the years. If you don't stick up for yourself, people will walk all over you. And I'm done being walked on. Update 1. So after the whole mess with Jessica, I figured things would go quiet again, like they had been for the past 5 years. I was actually kind of relieved after I told her no. I didn't feel bad about it because honestly, she didn't deserve my help after everything. But life doesn't just let you move on that easy, right? It was a few days after the whole Jessica thing, and I was just chilling, trying to get some schoolwork done, when my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was my dad. Yeah, my dad, who hadn't bothered to contact me once in 5 years. I stared at the screen for a second, kind of frozen, because I honestly didn't expect him to call me. Ever. A bunch of thoughts rushed through my head. Maybe he was calling to apologize, or maybe he had finally realized how badly he treated me. I don't know. I guess part of me was still holding out hope that he would call, just to say, "Hey, how are you? I miss you," or something like that. So stupidly, I answered. "Hello," I said, trying to keep it neutral because I wasn't sure what was coming. "Laura," he said in that serious, annoyed tone he always used, like he was about to lecture me. Right then, I knew this wasn't going to be a nice conversation. "Hi, Dad," I replied, already feeling the tension building. "I heard from Jessica," he said, and immediately I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Of course, he was calling because of her. "Oh yeah?" I said, trying not to let the frustration leak into my voice. He sighed, the kind of sigh that made it sound like I was the problem here. "She told me you refused to help her. She needed a place to stay and you just turned her away. How could you do that to your sister?" My sister. He actually had the nerve to call her that. I hadn't heard from him in years, and now he was coming at me, accusing me of being selfish because I didn't let the girl who wrecked my car and ignored me for half a decade crash at my place. I could barely believe it. "Dad," I said, trying to stay calm even though I was boiling inside. "Jessica and I haven't spoken in 5 years. She took my car without asking, wrecked it, and you didn't even care. You didn't even check on me after I moved out. Now she suddenly needs a place to stay, and I'm just supposed to forget everything and let her move in? You're still holding on to that?" he snapped, like I was being unreasonable for remembering the whole car incident. "That was years ago, Laura. She's your family. You need to get over it." Get over it? Seriously? It wasn't just about the car. It was about being ignored, being treated like I didn't matter for years, while he doted on Jess like she was his real daughter. I wasn't going to let him twist this around and make it seem like I was the one in the wrong. "Dad, it's not just about the car. You and Jessica made my life hell back then. You never cared about me unless I was in trouble or being criticized. I'm not going to let someone who's treated me like crap for years just walk back into my life because now they need something." There was a pause on the line, and for a second I thought maybe I had finally gotten through to him. Maybe he would see things from my perspective for once. But nope. Instead, he exploded. "You're so selfish," he yelled. "All these years, I thought you'd grow up and learn how to be part of a family, but you're just as inconsiderate as ever. Jessica needed you, and you turned your back on her. What kind of person does that?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was selfish? The guy who hadn't spoken to me in years, who never once checked to see if I was okay after I moved out, was now calling me selfish because I didn't want to let his golden child mooch off me? It was like I was living in some kind of twisted alternate reality. "Dad, you have no idea what my life has been like for the past 5 years," I said, my voice shaking now because I was so angry. "You've never even asked. You didn't care when I left. You didn't care when I struggled to get by on my own, and now you suddenly want to lecture me about family? You don't get to do that." He went quiet for a moment, but I knew he wasn't done. I could almost picture him pacing around trying to come up with something to say that would make me feel like the bad guy. "You're going to regret this one day," he said, his voice low but still full of anger. "When you realize you pushed your family away and there's no one left to help you, you'll see how wrong you are. I'm disappointed in you, Laura. I really am." That was it. That was the breaking point for me. I'd spent years trying to figure out why my dad didn't love me the way he loved Jessica, why he treated me like I was a burden instead of his daughter. But in that moment, I realized I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need to keep trying to make him see my worth. If he was disappointed in me, that was his problem, not mine. I'm done, Dad, I said, my voice steady now. If you want to be disappointed in me for standing up for myself, then fine. But I'm not going to apologize for not letting someone who's been nothing but toxic into my life again. You and Jessica made your choices. Now I'm making mine. There was silence on the other end, and I knew he wasn't going to apologize. That wasn't in his nature. Instead, he did what he always did, hung up on me without another word. Just like that, the conversation was over, and so was my relationship with him. For good this time. I sat there for a while just staring at my phone, trying to process everything. It was hard, you know? No matter how bad things were, a part of me still wanted to believe that my dad would come around eventually, that maybe we could have a real father-daughter relationship someday. But after that call, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't sad, though. Not really. More like relieved. Like I could finally stop hoping for something that was never going to be. I had my own life now, and I didn't need his approval to be happy. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually move on. Update 2. So, a little context before diving into this. My birthday's never really been a big deal. At least, not since I was a kid. Growing up, it was always kind of forgotten or brushed off, especially after Jessica showed up and took over the spotlight. But I'd gotten used to it. These days, I didn't expect much. Maybe a couple of texts from friends, a casual dinner or something. But this year? Well, this year was different. It started like a normal day. I woke up, checked my phone, saw a couple of happy birthday messages from some close friends, and went about my day. I wasn't planning anything special, just chilling at home and maybe treating myself to a little takeout later. You know, something low-key. Then my phone buzzed again, and I saw the name on the screen. It was my dad. Yeah, my dad calling me on my birthday. After 5 years of silence, after everything that had happened with Jessica, after the blow-up call we had a few days ago, now he was calling me. I stared at the phone for a second like, what does he want now? Part of me didn't want to answer. I mean, I figured it'd just be more drama, right? But I don't know. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was some tiny part of me hoping that, for once, he was going to wish me a happy birthday or maybe even apologize. So yeah, I answered. Hey, I said, keeping it short, trying not to sound too eager or annoyed. Laura, he started, his voice way too formal, like he was getting ready for a business call. I've been thinking about our last conversation. Great. Here we go, I thought. He's going to double down on everything again. But what he said next caught me off guard. Listen, it's your birthday, and I know we've had our differences. I just want to say, happy birthday. For a split second, I didn't even know how to react. I mean, this was the first time in years he'd acknowledged my birthday at all, let alone called me. It wasn't some heartfelt, tear-jerking apology or anything, but it was something. Thanks, I replied, a little confused. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. There was this awkward silence for a moment, like he didn't know what to say next. I could almost picture him sitting there, trying to figure out how to keep the conversation going without getting into the mess from before. So, how are you doing? He asked, and it sounded so forced. Like, I could tell he wasn't really interested in how I was doing. It was more like he was just going through the motions, ticking boxes in his head. I'm good, I said, not wanting to dive into anything too deep. I didn't really trust where this was going, but I figured I'd play along for now. Just, school, work, same old stuff. Another pause. Then he finally said what I knew was coming. Jessica told me you were pretty harsh with her the other day, he said, his voice shifting back to that serious, almost condescending tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. I don't understand why you're still holding on to all that anger. And there it was. I should have known better. Of course, this wasn't just a birthday call. This was him trying to patch things up between me and Jessica, as if all the years of crap she put me through didn't matter. Like I was the one who needed to make amends. Dad, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, even though I could feel my frustration building again. It's not about anger. It's about boundaries. I've moved on from everything that happened, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to let Jessica walk back into my life like nothing happened. You can't expect me to just forget everything. You need to let go of the past, he said, like he hadn't even heard a word I'd said. She's trying to move forward, and you should too. This isn't what family does. We're supposed to support each other. I could feel my blood boiling at this point. I had spent years trying to get him to support me, and now he was acting like I was the one who had failed the family. It was like he had completely rewritten history in his head, where Jessica was the victim and I was the villain. Dad, I did support her, I shot back, finally letting some of my frustration out. For years, I put up with everything she and Mary threw at me. I was the one who had to deal with being ignored, pushed aside, and treated like crap. And now, when I finally stand up for myself, I'm the bad guy? How is that fair? There was this long pause, and I thought maybe I had gotten through to him. Maybe he'd finally see things from my side. But nope. He just sighed, like he was tired of having to deal with me. "You're making this so much harder than it needs to be, Laura," he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice now. "Jessica's your sister. You need to act like it." And that's when I realized he was never going to get it. No matter what I said, no matter how many times I explained it, he was always going to take Jessica's side. She was the daughter he chose, and I was the one he put up with. "I am acting like it," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I'm just acting like the sister she deserves. You can't force me to forgive her just because it's easier for you. I've moved on, and you need to do the same." There was another silence, and this time it was heavy, like he didn't know what to say next, or maybe he just realized he wasn't going to win this one. "Fine," he finally said, his voice clipped. "But don't come crying to me when you realize you've burned every bridge you have left." And with that, he hung up. I sat there for a minute, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. I wasn't even mad at that point, just done. Done with trying to get my dad to see me. Done with hoping for something that was never going to happen. It wasn't the birthday I expected, but maybe it was the one I needed, because now I knew for sure. My dad was never going to change, and I didn't need him to. I was fine on my own. Fine on my Update 3. So after that birthday call from my dad, I really thought I was done with them. I mean, it was pretty clear he wasn't interested in actually hearing me or understanding anything from my side. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I was ready to move on for good, or at least that's what I thought. But life always seems to throw one more thing at you when you least expect it, right? And this time it came in the form of another call. But not from my dad. This time it was from my mom. Now my relationship with my mom has always been kinda distant. She wasn't really involved in the whole mess with my dad and Jessica because, well, she had her own stuff going on. Her job kept her super busy, and honestly, she never seemed to want to get involved. She was more of a you handle your own problems type of person. So when she called, I wasn't sure what to expect. We hadn't really talked about any of the drama that had been happening recently, and I figured maybe she was just calling to check in or ask about school. "Hey, Mom," I answered, trying to sound casual, even though I was a little on edge after everything that had been happening. "Hi, Laura," she replied, her voice sounding more serious than usual. "I wanted to talk to you about something. It's about your dad and Jessica." Here we go again, I thought. "Yeah?" I said, already bracing myself for whatever was coming next. "I know things have been rough between you and them," she started, "but your dad called me yesterday. He's really worried about you, Laura. He thinks you've been shutting everyone out." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Worried about me? That was rich, coming from a guy who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years, except to yell at me for not letting Jessica move in. "Mom, I'm not shutting everyone out," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just don't want to deal with people who only care about me when they need something. Dad's only calling because Jessica wants something, and I'm not playing that game anymore." "I get that," she said, in that way people do when they clearly don't get it. "But family is family, Laura. You can't just cut them out of your life forever. At some point, you're going to need them." I couldn't believe she was saying this. After everything that had happened, after all the years of being ignored, suddenly I'm supposed to need them? "Mom, I don't need them," I said, a little sharper than I meant to. "I've been fine on my own. I'm in school. I'm working. I've built my own life. They haven't been there for me, so why should I be there for them now?" She sighed, and I could tell she was getting frustrated. "Look, I'm not saying what they did was right, but sometimes you have to be the bigger person. Holding on to all this resentment is only going to hurt you in the long run." There it was again. Another person telling me to just let it go like it was so easy. Like years of neglect and being treated like an outsider in my own family could just be forgotten because family. "Mom, this isn't about resentment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about respect. They've never respected me, and I'm not going to keep letting them walk all over me just because we're related. I've spent too long trying to be the bigger person, and it's gotten me nowhere." She didn't say anything for a minute, and I could hear her thinking it over. I hoped, for a second, that maybe she'd finally understand. But then she said the last thing I expected. "You know, your dad's right," she said quietly. "You've always been so stubborn. You never let anyone in. That's why things are like this." I was stunned. Stubborn? Me? I'd been bending over backward for years trying to fit into a family that never wanted me, and now I was the stubborn one? Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. I'm the one who's been stubborn? I'm the one who's wrong here? I'm just saying, she replied, her voice calm like she was giving me some kind of life lesson. If you don't learn to let people in, you're going to end up alone. That was it. The final straw. I couldn't believe that even my mom, the one person who should have understood what I'd been through, was blaming me for everything. Mom, if letting people in means getting treated like garbage, then yeah, maybe I will end up alone, I snapped. But at least I won't be miserable. I'm done being the one who has to make everything better. If they want to fix things, that's on them, not me. She didn't say anything after that. I think she realized she'd pushed too far, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I was done. With all of it. I gotta go, I said, cutting the conversation short before she could say anything else. Laura. But I didn't wait for her to finish. I hung up and just sat there, staring at my phone, trying to wrap my head around the fact that even my own mom was siding with them. At that moment, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. Not from my dad, not from Jessica, and not even from my mom. I'd spent too long trying to get people to see me, to value me, and all it had done was make me feel worse. So yeah, maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I was shutting people out. But if that meant protecting myself from getting hurt again, then so be it. I'd rather be alone and happy than surrounded by people who didn't really care about me. And with that, I finally felt like I could move on. For real this time. Stepdad demands rent after I turn 18. He doesn't know I own the house, so here's what happened. Okay, so I'm turning 18 in a couple of months, and let me tell you, life at home has gone from regular boring to weird real fast. Like, it's almost hard to believe, and I still can't wrap my head around it. So here's the deal. I live in a house that used to belong to my dad, Mark. Now, when I say dad, I mean my biological dad, not the guy my mom married later. My real dad passed away when I was just 6 years old. It sucked, but at least he made sure I was set up for the future. He left the house to me, not my mom, but to me. So, technically, I've owned this place since I was a little kid. For a long time, it was just me and my mom, Julia, living here. Things were fine. We had a good routine. I went to school, she worked, and we just did our thing, you know? But then, a couple of years after my dad passed, my mom started dating again, and that's when Brad came into the picture. At first, Brad seemed all right. He wasn't trying to act like my new dad or anything, which I appreciated. He moved in with us when they got married, and we all lived under one roof. Everything was pretty smooth for a while. Like, I didn't really have much to complain about. We weren't super close or anything, but we got along. He'd do his thing, I'd do mine, and that was that. But recently, things have gotten really, really weird. Like, what the hell is even going on kind of weird. So, just a few days ago, Brad sits me down for what he called a serious talk. Now I'm thinking, oh great, what's this about? I figured maybe it was going to be something about house rules or chores or some random thing like that. Nope. What he hit me with was way worse. He starts talking about how I'm going to be 18 soon, which, yeah, obviously I know that. But then he casually drops the bomb. He says that once I turn 18, I should start paying rent if I want to keep living here. I'm sitting there like, wait, what? Did I hear that right? I honestly thought he was joking for a second because who asks their kid to pay rent in their own house? But nope, Brad was dead serious. Now at this point, I'm just confused and kind of mad. This is literally my house. My dad left it to me, not my mom, not Brad, me. So I tell him straight up, the house actually belongs to me. My dad left it to me when he passed away. And you know what this dude does? He laughs. Yeah, he actually laughed like I had just told him the funniest joke ever. I was sitting there dead serious, and he thought I was messing with him. Like, dude, I'm not joking. This is literally the house I grew up in. So I have to explain it all to him again, and at this point, I'm getting frustrated. I decided to go to my mom, Julia, to make sure I'm not losing my mind here. I ask her, Mom, did you ever tell Brad that the house is mine? And get this, she never told him. Like, never. She's been married to the guy for years, and not once did she mention, oh hey, by the way, this house belongs to my son. I couldn't believe it. Brad comes back later, and I have to explain it to him all over again. This time, he doesn't laugh. He finally gets it. The house is mine. The look on his face was priceless, like he was trying to process everything at once. He seemed embarrassed, which, to be fair, is understandable. I mean, how would you feel if you've been living in a house thinking it's your wife's, and then you find out it actually belongs to her kid? But instead of just leaving it at that, Brad tries to justify himself. He's like, oh, I only asked you to pay rent because I thought your mom owned the house, and I was trying to teach you responsibility. Responsibility, he says. Like, I'm not already aware of what's going on in my own life. Sure, Brad, you're really helping me out by asking me to pay rent for my own house. I can tell things are going to get more awkward from here, but I don't back down. I decide to push back a little, see how Brad reacts. The next morning, we're all sitting at breakfast, and the tension in the air is thick. I figure it's now or never, so I drop my own little bombshell. I say, well, since the house is mine, I think it's only fair that you and Mom start paying rent if you want to keep living here after I turn 18. Yeah, I know. It was kind of a power move, but I wasn't going to let him just push me around in my own house. The look on Brad's face, he was completely caught off guard. His mouth actually dropped open for a second before he started sputtering. Wait, what? That's not fair! You can't just expect us to start paying rent? We're family! I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Now he's talking about family? This guy literally sat me down yesterday and told me I had to pay rent in my own house. But suddenly, when the tables are turned, it's unfair? Nah, Brad, you don't get to play that game. I tell him, look, you wanted me to pay rent to live in this house, so it's only fair if you pay rent too. I mean, you're living here, aren't you? He starts getting defensive, saying it's different for adults, and that I shouldn't treat family like this. I just shrugged and said, you didn't seem to have a problem with asking me for rent. Why is it such a big deal now? Things start getting heated. He says I'm being spiteful, that I'm only asking them to pay rent because I'm trying to get back at him for asking me. He storms off before we can even finish the conversation. My mom? She stayed quiet through the whole thing. Later, she pulls me aside and says, I think you're being too harsh on Brad. He was wrong to ask you for rent, but this whole thing is going to tear the family apart if you keep pushing it. I couldn't believe it. My own mom was taking his side, even though he was the one who started all of this. I told her, Mom, if this family gets torn apart, it's because Brad couldn't handle the truth. This is my house. He doesn't get to make the rules. She didn't have much to say after that. Now, we're all just living in this weird, awkward tension. Brad barely talks to me, and my mom just acts like everything is normal. But it's not. It's really not. I can't help but wonder what's going to happen next. All right, so after that whole rent conversation blew up, things at home got super weird. Like, you could cut the tension with a butter knife. Brad wasn't talking to me, and my mom, Julia, just kind of floated through the house like nothing happened. It was this uncomfortable silence that lasted days, and every time we were in the same room, it was like no one knew what to say. It's not like I expected things to go back to normal right away, but man, this was getting ridiculous. Brad kept giving me these looks, like he was trying to figure out what to say, or maybe just pissed off that I didn't back down. He didn't really try to argue again, but you could feel how annoyed he was. So, I was just doing my thing, trying to keep my head down. But one morning, something strange happened. I was in the kitchen grabbing some cereal, and I overheard my mom on the phone. She didn't know I was there, so she was speaking kind of low, but I caught enough of the conversation to know it was about me. I heard her say, I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. He's not going to understand. No, Brad doesn't want to tell him yet. I froze. My heart was pounding and my mind was racing. What aren't they telling me? I stayed quiet, listening for more, but she must have realized I was nearby because she quickly changed the subject and hung up the phone. I didn't say anything right away, but that conversation stuck in my head for the rest of the day. What could they possibly be hiding from me? I mean, it's not like I had any deep secrets, right? The house was already mine. What else could be going on? Later that evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. So I went up to my mom when Brad wasn't around and asked her straight up, Mom, who were you talking to on the phone this morning? She looked kind of startled, like a deer caught in headlights. She tried to brush it off at first, saying it was just a friend, and it wasn't important. But I could tell she was lying. I pressed her. I heard you say something about me. What's going on? What aren't you telling me? At that point, her face kind of fell. She sat down at the kitchen table and sighed like she knew this moment was coming, but wasn't ready for it. There's something I need to explain, she started. But just as she was about to spill whatever secret she'd been keeping, Brad walked in. Great timing, Brad. He looked at both of us and immediately sensed the tension. What's going on? He asked, his voice sharp, like he was already on edge. My mom just shook her head and stood up, clearly not wanting to have this conversation in front of him. We'll talk later, she mumbled, avoiding eye contact with both of us. I was pissed, like really pissed. What the hell was going on, and why were they both acting like I couldn't handle it? I wanted answers, but of course, I wasn't going to get them tonight. Brad went back to ignoring me, and my mom acted like nothing had happened. The next day, I decided I wasn't waiting around anymore. I needed to figure out what they were hiding. So I started paying more attention, watching their little interactions. And that's when I noticed something weird. Brad had been acting strange, not just avoiding me, but doing things like sneaking around when he thought I wasn't looking. I caught him going through some papers in my mom's office. At first I thought it was nothing, but the more I saw it, the more I realized he was digging through stuff that had to do with the house. Why was Brad suddenly so interested in the house paperwork? It got even stranger when I saw him meeting with some random guy at a coffee shop a few days later. I followed him. Yeah, I know. Not my proudest moment, but I was curious. They were sitting there, looking all serious, talking in low voices. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough to know something was up. Brad handed the guy some papers. It looked like he was signing something. What the hell is Brad up to? I went home fuming. I was tired of the secrets, the lies, and all the sneaking around. I didn't care if it was Brad or my mom. I was going to confront both of them. That night, I waited for the right moment. We were all sitting around the dinner table, not talking as usual, and I decided enough was enough. So, Brad, who was that guy you met at the coffee shop earlier today? I blurted out, staring him dead in the eye. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. He looked at me like a deer in headlights. What are you talking about? He stammered. You know what I'm talking about. I saw you with that guy. You were giving him papers. What's going on? I wasn't backing down. I wanted answers. My mom's face went pale. She looked between the two of us, clearly not expecting this bomb to drop at the dinner table. Brad tried to brush it off, saying it was nothing, just some business stuff, but I wasn't buying it. I slammed my hand down on the table. I'm not stupid, Brad. This isn't just business stuff. You've been acting shady for weeks now, and I know you're hiding something. What the hell is going on? That's when my mom finally cracked. She started crying, which threw me off because she hardly ever cries. She looked at me and said, Lucas, we didn't want to tell you like this, but the house isn't as secure as you think. I was confused. What do you mean? She wiped her tears and continued. Your dad left the house to you, yes, but there's something we didn't tell you. The mortgage wasn't fully paid off. There's still a significant amount of debt on the house, and we've been struggling to keep up with the payments. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. What? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Brad chimed in, clearly uncomfortable. We didn't want to worry you, especially with everything coming up like your 18th birthday and all. I've been trying to figure out how to handle it without involving you, but it's complicated. Complicated? That didn't even begin to cover how I was feeling. Suddenly, everything made sense. Brad's weird behavior, my mom's cryptic phone call, the tension. They were both trying to figure out how to deal with this massive debt hanging over my head, and they hadn't told me any of it. I sat there in stunned silence as my mom tried to explain more, but honestly, I wasn't listening anymore. All I could think about was how everything I thought I knew about my own house, my own life, had been a lie. So after that huge reveal about the mortgage and the debt, I was feeling completely thrown off. I mean, 1 second, I thought I had everything figured out. This house was mine. End of story, right? But now, I'm sitting there realizing that it's way more complicated than I ever imagined. It wasn't just about Brad being shady anymore. This was about the house itself, my future, and honestly my whole life turning into a mess I didn't sign up for. That night, I barely slept. I was lying there in my bed staring at the ceiling, just replaying everything over and over in my head. The whole thing about my dad leaving the house to me? Well, yeah, that part was true. But now there's this massive debt hanging over my head. And apparently, no one thought to tell me until it was too late. My mom and Brad had been struggling with the payments for God knows how long, and instead of coming to me earlier, they just let it pile up. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get to the bottom of this. So I sat down with my mom again, this time without Brad around. I needed some straight answers from her. Okay, Mom, explain it to me. How much debt are we talking about? How far behind are you guys on the payments? I asked, trying to stay calm. But inside, I was a mix of anger and anxiety. She looked so uncomfortable, like she didn't want to answer, but I wasn't letting her off the hook this time. She sighed and said, Lucas, it's about $80,000. We've been behind on the payments for almost a year now. My jaw practically hit the floor. $80,000? How the hell do you let it get to that point without saying anything? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I've been living here thinking everything's fine and now you drop this on me? I didn't want you to worry, she said, which honestly pissed me off more than it helped. Like, yeah, great, Mom. Let's just wait until I'm 18 and drop an $80,000 bomb on my lap. That'll make everything easier. I'm old enough to handle it, I told her. You should have told me when things started going south. She didn't have much to say after that. Just more of the same, we didn't want to burden you stuff, which frankly didn't cut it anymore. Then I realized something even worse. Was Brad trying to fix this whole situation by himself? Like, is that why he was sneaking around with paperwork? I had a bad feeling about this, so I decided to confront him. I caught him later that day while he was in the garage messing with his car. I walked right up to him, not wasting any time. Brad, I need to know what you've been up to. I saw you meeting that guy, giving him papers. What are you doing about the house? He looked at me like he'd been caught, which he totally had. He fumbled around with his words for a bit before saying, I'm just trying to figure things out, Lucas. I'm trying to fix this. Fix this how? What's your plan? I pressed, because I knew damn well he didn't have some miracle solution. Brad finally came clean, and what he said made my blood boil. I've been looking into getting a second mortgage or refinancing the house to cover the debt, he said. Excuse me? A second mortgage? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're going to dig us into even more debt? Are you insane? He tried to justify it, saying it was the only way to keep the house, but I wasn't buying it. That's a terrible plan, Brad. You're just kicking the problem down the road. We're already drowning in debt, and you think taking out more is going to solve anything? He didn't have an answer. Of course he didn't. I could see in his face that even he knew it was a stupid idea, but he didn't know what else to do. I was so mad I just walked away. I needed to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and left the house, just wandering around the neighborhood for a while, trying to make sense of everything. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This whole mess could have been avoided if they had just told me sooner. Now, I'm stuck trying to figure out how to dig out of an $80,000 hole with no real plan. I spent the rest of the day just thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to sell the house and get out from under all the debt, but at the same time, this was my house, my dad's house. The thought of selling it felt like giving up, like letting go of the one thing my dad left me. I couldn't do that. But keeping it meant dealing with all this financial crap I wasn't ready for. That night, I sat down and started looking into my options. I Googled everything I could about mortgages, debt relief, selling houses, whatever I could find that might give me a way out of this mess. It was overwhelming, and honestly, I felt like I was drowning in information. But one thing became clear. I couldn't trust Brad to handle this. He was only making things worse, and I had to take control before he dragged us even deeper into this disaster. The next day, I called a financial advisor. Yeah, I know, sounds super grown up, right? But I figured if anyone could help me figure this out, it was someone who actually knew what they were doing. I explained the situation, about the debt, the mortgage, everything. The advisor laid it all out for me, saying I had two real options: either sell the house and pay off the debt, or try to negotiate a payment plan to keep the house and slowly chip away at what we owed. Neither option was great, but at least now I had a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. I thanked the advisor and hung up, feeling a little better, but still totally stressed. Later that evening, I sat down with my mom and Brad again. This time, I had a plan. I told them straight up, we're not taking out a second mortgage. That's just going to make things worse. We either need to sell the house or figure out a payment plan with the bank. Brad didn't like hearing that. He still thought his half-baked idea of refinancing was the best move, but I shut him down. I'm not letting you drag us even deeper into this. We're doing this the right way. My mom didn't say much. She just nodded, probably realizing that I was right. Brad grumbled, but eventually he gave in. He knew there was no other option. We ended the conversation there, with a loose plan to talk to the bank and try to negotiate something. It wasn't perfect, but at least it felt like a step in the right direction. But even with that, the weight of the situation still hung over me like a cloud I couldn't shake. So, after deciding we weren't going down Brad's stupid route of taking a second mortgage, we had to face reality. That meant dealing with the bank. Not gonna lie. The idea of sitting down with a bunch of people who probably talk about finances for breakfast made me want to throw up. But I knew we didn't have a choice. This was it. We either get a grip on the situation, or everything's going to fall apart. The day of the meeting was tense. My mom had been quiet ever since we agreed on the payment plan idea. I could tell she was stressed, and honestly, I didn't blame her. Brad was still acting like this whole thing wasn't as serious as it was. He kept saying stuff like, we'll figure it out, like it was some minor inconvenience. But $80,000 isn't just something you figure out. That's life-ruining debt. We headed to the bank that afternoon. It was one of those fancy-looking buildings with glass everywhere, and everyone inside was wearing suits, which immediately made me feel out of place. I mean, here we are, a family drowning in debt, walking into a place that looks like it deals with millionaires. Not a great vibe. We sat down with this advisor dude, Gary, who looked way too relaxed for what we were about to talk about. He was polite, but you could tell he's done this 1,000 times. Meanwhile, I was sweating bullets, and Brad was acting like it was some casual coffee meeting. Gary opened up a laptop and started asking questions. "So, you're behind on your mortgage payments?" he said, looking up at us with this neutral face. I nodded. My mom stayed quiet, and Brad jumped in. "Yeah, we've been trying to catch up, but it's been tough." "Can you explain the situation?" Gary asked, typing something on his laptop. I was sick of Brad trying to handle everything, so I cut in. "We're $80,000 behind and the house is in my name. My dad left it to me, but no one told me about the debt until recently." Gary gave me a sympathetic look but didn't stop typing. "I see. So what's the goal here? Are you looking to negotiate a payment plan, or are you considering selling the property to cover the debt?" That's when the reality really hit me. There were no great options. We were either going to be paying off this debt for years, or I'd have to give up the house. Either way, my life was going to be completely different. Brad, as expected, started talking about the payment plan option like it was the only way forward, but I wasn't ready to make a decision just yet. "I don't want to jump into anything without knowing the details," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "What would a payment plan look like?" Gary nodded and pulled up some numbers. "It depends on how much you can afford each month, but typically with this kind of debt, you'd be looking at payments over the next 10, 15 years, assuming you can't make a large lump sum payment up front." 15 years. That's how long I'd be paying for this mistake. It felt like a punch to the gut. "And if we sell the house?" I asked, even though I already hated the idea. This was my dad's house. Selling it felt like losing the last piece of him I had. "If you sell, you'd need to ensure the sale covers the remaining debt, plus any fees associated with the process. It might clear the debt, but you'd walk away with nothing, depending on the market value," Gary explained. Great. So either way, we were screwed. Brad, still acting like everything was no big deal, leaned back in his chair and said, "I think the payment plan's the way to go. We can handle it. Right, Julia?" My mom hesitated, looking at me like she didn't know what to say. I knew she was leaning towards the payment plan too, but she didn't want to say it because she knew how much this house meant to me. I could feel the pressure mounting, everyone waiting for me to make the final call. But I wasn't going to rush into this. "We're going to need some time to think about it," I told Gary. He nodded and said he'd send us some options to review. We left the bank, and the car ride home was dead silent. I didn't even know what to think anymore. The weight of it all was suffocating. Brad, of course, couldn't keep his mouth shut. As soon as we got inside the house, he started going on about how we should just go with the payment plan and stop dragging things out. "We can't afford to waste time," he said, like I didn't already know that. I snapped, "Brad, you're not the one who's going to be stuck with this debt for 15 years. It's my house, remember?" He tried to backtrack, but I wasn't having it. "You've been making decisions without me for months, and look where it's gotten us. I'm not letting you bulldoze through this like it's your call." My mom finally spoke up, trying to calm things down. "Lucas, we'll figure this out together. We're all in this, okay?" I appreciated that she was trying to be supportive, but it didn't change the fact that I was the one stuck in the middle of this mess. They could walk away if they wanted to. I couldn't. That night, I stayed up late again, staring at my computer screen, trying to find some sort of answer. I looked at the numbers over and over, trying to figure out how we could make it work. But every time I thought about making those payments for 15 years, it made me sick. And then, in the middle of the night, an idea hit me. What if I didn't sell the house, but rented it out instead? It was a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, I could keep the house in my name, pay off the debt with rental income, and still hold on to the last piece of my dad's legacy. I started doing research, diving into websites and forums about renting properties. It wasn't going to be easy. There were a lot of legal steps I'd have to take, and I'd need to find tenants fast, but it felt like the best shot I had at saving the house without drowning in debt. The next morning, I told my mom about the idea. What if we rent the house out? We could live somewhere smaller, cover the mortgage with the rental payments, and still keep the house. She looked surprised, but didn't shut it down. "It's a lot to take on, Lucas. Being a landlord isn't easy. Are you sure about this?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think it's better than selling it or being stuck in debt for the next 15 years. Brad, predictably, wasn't thrilled. "You're going to trust strangers to live in this house? What if they wreck the place?" I ignored him. This wasn't his decision anymore. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it felt like the only option that gave me a chance to hold on to something. I wasn't ready to let go of my dad's house, and if renting it out was the way to keep it, I'd do whatever it took. After I came up with the idea to rent out the house, things started moving fast. Like, faster than I thought they would. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing at first. I spent hours on Google looking up how to be a landlord, how to find tenants, and all that stuff. It's kind of crazy how complicated it is. I thought you just put up a for rent sign and boom, you're done. Nope, there's way more to it. First off, I needed to figure out how much rent I could actually charge. I had no idea what the going rate was, so I started looking at similar houses in the area. Some of them were renting for way more than I expected, which was kind of a relief. I was hoping that if I could charge a decent amount, we'd be able to cover the mortgage payments without too much trouble. But I also knew I couldn't just throw out a random number and hope for the best. I had to be smart about this. I sat down with my mom to talk about it. Brad was out, so it was just the two of us. I explained everything I'd been researching, how much we might be able to get for the house if we rented it, and what that would mean for us. She listened quietly, nodding along, but looking a little unsure. "I don't know, Lucas," she said finally. "It sounds like a lot of work. What if something goes wrong? What if we can't find good tenants?" "I get it, Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "But this feels like the only way to keep the house. I don't want to sell it, and I definitely don't want to be paying off debt for the next 15 years. This is our best shot." She sighed and looked around the house, like she was trying to picture someone else living here. I knew it was hard for her. She had memories in this place too, even though it wasn't technically hers. It was where she raised me, and where she'd been with my dad before he passed. I could tell she didn't want to let it go either. "Okay," she said after a long pause. "Let's try it. But we need to be careful, Lucas. This could get tricky." So with her on board, I got to work. I started getting the house ready, cleaning it up, fixing small things that I hadn't noticed before, just trying to make it look as nice as possible. Brad, of course, wasn't exactly thrilled about the whole thing. He kept making snide comments like, "Oh, you're going to trust random people in your house?" Or, "Good luck being a landlord, Lucas. Hope you're ready for all the headaches." I ignored him. At this point, Brad's opinion didn't matter to me. He had done enough damage by trying to make decisions behind my back. This was my plan now, and I wasn't going to let him mess it up. After about a week of prepping the house, I listed it online. I wasn't sure what to expect. Like, would anyone even be interested in renting it? But within a few days, I started getting messages. People wanted to come see the house. I couldn't believe it. Maybe this plan was actually going to work. I set up a few showings, and honestly, meeting potential tenants was a weird experience. Some people were super nice and seemed like they'd take care of the place. Others, not so much. I had this one guy who showed up late and looked like he hadn't showered in a week. He didn't even take his shoes off when he came in, just stomped around the house like he was doing me a favor by being there. Yeah, hard pass on that guy. But then there was this young couple, Sam and Jess. They were probably in their late 20s, newly married, and looking for a place to start their life together. They were polite, asked a lot of good questions, and seemed really interested in the house. After they left, I had a good feeling about them. A few days later, I called them up and offered them the place. They were thrilled and agreed to move in by the end of the month. I couldn't believe how smoothly everything was going. It felt like maybe, just maybe, things were starting to look up. But, of course, nothing can ever be that simple, right? About a week before Sam and Jess were set to move in, I got a call from the bank. My stomach dropped the second I saw the number on my phone. It was Gary, the guy we'd met with about the mortgage. He sounded serious. "Lucas, I've been reviewing the paperwork for your property, and I'm afraid there's something we need to talk about," he said. Great. Just when I thought I had everything under control. I went down to the bank to meet with him, and that's when he dropped the real bomb on me. Apparently, there was a lien on the house. Basically, my mom had taken out a loan against the property years ago, right after my dad died. I had no idea. She never told me. And the worst part? The amount owed on the lien was nearly $50,000, on top of the $80,000 mortgage debt we were already dealing with. I was speechless. I mean, how do you even process that? We were already in way over our heads, and now there's another $50,000 hanging over us? I went home that night and confronted my mom. "Why didn't you tell me about the lien? We could have been dealing with this a long time ago, but you kept it from me. Now we're even deeper in debt, and I don't know how we're going to get out of this." She looked devastated, like she knew she'd messed up but didn't know how to fix it. "I'm sorry, Lucas," she said quietly. I was scared. I didn't want to lose the house, and I thought I could handle it. But then everything spiraled out of control. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was furious. How could she keep something like that from me? But another part of me felt sorry for her. She was just as overwhelmed as I was, maybe even more. But that didn't change the fact that we were now staring down a $130,000 debt, and renting the house wasn't going to be enough to cover it. The next few days were a blur. I felt like I was stuck in quicksand, sinking deeper and deeper no matter what I did. I kept thinking about my dad, about how hard he worked to give me this house, and now it felt like it was slipping away piece by piece. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. I didn't know how we were going to fix this, but I knew I had to keep fighting. This house was more than just a building. It was my connection to my dad, my future, and everything I'd worked for. And I wasn't going to let it go without a fight.